Good afternoon to everyone. So, today you are tuned in with a discussion on education beyond COVID 19, featuring Honorable State Minister of Education, reforms, promotion of open universities and distance learning, Susil Premajayanta, and Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Harinya Amarasuriya. And they will be speaking to you representing the Sri Lanka Parliament and the Ministerial Consultative Committee on Education. So, just to remind you that you can ask a question live or under the hashtag LKAskMP in Sinhala, Tamil, or English related to today's focus, and we will take it up accordingly. So, State Minister of Education reforms. You were the last to address the House yesterday, specifically on education. So let me turn to you first. We know that the COVID 19 pandemic has created a considerable disruption of education systems, not just in Sri Lanka alone, but worldwide. So this is something that everyone has to deal with on a global scale. So, how is Sri Lanka dealing with the situation?
No, of course, this is the time that we are experiencing this type of pandemic.
Sir, you're on mute. If you can unmute. Honorable State Minister, you are
Yes.
currently on mute. We can have. So maybe if you leave and rejoin, we will be able
Yeah.
to hear you.
Yeah. Can you
so-
hear me now?
So while we connect with the Honorable State Minister, let's we will turn on to Dr. Harini. I think apparently we can't hear Dr. Harini as well. Unfortunately, please bear with us while we figure out this for the moment. Apologies, please bear with us. We have a small technical issue where we cannot connect with the honorable members. Please bear with us for a moment until we get this issue sorted. Unfortunately, we cannot individually connect with the honorable members through their official account. So, but we have the honorable state minister with us. So, honorable state minister.
Yes. Of course, uh, at the outset means March 2020, when we, for the first time, when we are experiencing this COVID-19 pandemic. That time, of course, we managed the first wave, but I can tell you, within the last year, 2020, out of 210 school days, according to the school calendar, the students went to school only 62 days. So, but however, we managed the grade 5 scholarship, O level and A level, because without any issue or COVID-19 pandemic, students studied, they are up to grade 11, then grade 13 and grade 5. But unfortunately, this year in the 2021, except Western province, all other provinces, the students went to school for the entire first term. But unfortunately, the Western province, only 6 days the students went to school. the whole year. So therefore, they lost the first term in the Western province, as well as whole country, all 9 provinces. The students they lost their normal general education so far. So therefore, it's a challenging task. So the next alternative is to start online education. But with my experience in the past as a Minister of Education, 2005 to 10, and at that time, of course, I introduced smart boards, and we started 82 computer resource centers, that is to train all the teachers, and we want to improve the IT education among teachers, ISAs, directors, and the students, especially in the junior secondary and the senior secondary level. Because I have that experience when I attended Education Ministers Conference in London. uh, I had the opportunity to visit the breads exhibition. There I found the new technology using by even the kids, small kids, the preschool levels. But unfortunately, here we didn't have such facilities. But by now, of course, any part of the country, we have electricity. But unfortunately, the telecom, of course, they completed the Ratnapura district a month ago. So still they are putting up towers and all that. They try to give connections. So therefore, my personal opinion is, especially in the primary education, preschool, especially grade 1 and 2, where students are taught on activity based by the primary teachers. So therefore, we didn't have much time to train the teachers how they can get the connectivity and prepare the lessons according to the syllabuses and teacher guides by using textbooks and other materials. So of course, it's a challenging task. Therefore, from my state ministry, we have uh, sent a proposal to the Ministry of Education. Now it's before the cabinet. Most probably by this week we are getting the approval. With that, of course, the proposal is keeping children learning through home-based activities during the COVID-19 closed down of schools. So other countries, even in Sri Lanka, the students who are getting ready for London O levels and A levels, they are given assignments or the modules. So then they attend to that with the guidance of teachers, and they collect materials to various sources, and they prepare it and then send to the school. They are, of course, once a week, the teachers they go through it, and we have to guide them. Then they assist and give some gradings. There's some assessment even without examinations. So this is the method that some of the international schools and other countries are using. So then we are going to apply the same method, but matching to our education system. But of course, then by doing that, we can engage almost all the teachers, about 247,000 teachers in the public sector, government schools about 10,165, and then even the private or the international schools, it is their choice, and then they can engage, and then the 4.2 million students also can engage, even without access to the IT or means connect internet and other facilities. But the education ministry, so they have started online, but the success percentage is limited because the infrastructure is not so good in our country compared to most of the developed countries. But and at the same time, we have e-Taksalava, that is the platform handled by Ministry of Education Reforms. We have a team there. So if you get the access to Itaxalaba, then you can get all the contents, the lessons, all the materials in the Itaxalaba without charging any fee. You need not pay for data, right? But one then other issue is most of the students they don't have laptops, desktops, or even smartphones. So this is another issue that our students, teachers, even the teachers or the resources like that, of course. So that is why we propose to have this home-based learning that is based on activities and the modules. So apart from that, of course, we started Guru Gadara program, that is iChannel Netra, from 4 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the night, Sinhala medium and Tamil medium. we continue with, and then we have produced 6,000 programs. Out of that, we have telecasted 5,200. It is only Rupahani Corporation assisted us with some payment to telecast these Gurugedara lessons. But unfortunately, I had two rounds of talks with all the media institutions. It is only Rupahani Corporation who assisted us to start this program. We have another program that we are going to start it within next couple of weeks. That is with the use of satellite. We are going to have 16 channels for each and every grade, and the advanced level all four streams. So that is in the pipeline. So at the moment, uh, these are the steps that we have taken as a Minister of Education and the reforms.
Dr. Harini, do you have any opinion in terms of the contemporary situation in Sri Lanka pertaining to education, maybe in line with our State Minister or as opposed to what he just said?
Thank you. First, I think this is a great opportunity for us as parliamentarians to engage with the public. And I'm really pleased to see the parliament encouraging this kind of engagement where people can directly connect with us. So thank you for this opportunity to talk about a really important issue. Uh, yes, I think, as you said, globally we are all facing this problem. And before I get into the technicalities of access and connectivity that we have devices, I would like to point something a little broader, as in the fact that, in a way, I think we have to all acknowledge that COVID has put us all into a really unusual and abnormal situation. This is not something that we experience every day. This is not something, perhaps, this is something that perhaps we experience every 500 or 600 years or so. It's something that none of us have had any prior experience of, knowledge of. It's all very new to us. So, in such unusual and abnormal situations, I think disruptions are to be expected. What I think we need to do is to also acknowledge those disruptions and not try to go on as if we can do things in a normal fashion. So this may mean actually that we need to think about how education and what education learn, and more importantly what learning means in a context such as this. That would require, before we even go into the technicalities of delivering education, to actually thinking about the syllabus, thinking about perhaps adjusting the syllabus to these conditions, thinking about ways in which we can make use of this opportunity to help children learn in different ways and to learn about different things. For example, when you're in a lockdown situation, when you're restricted to your home, how do you still make use of what is around you to learn things? As you grow older, perhaps at university level, what are the ways, what are the innovations, what is the contribution you can make, not just as a student but even as university academics, into dealing with this whole COVID situation? These can be opportunities for learning, opportunities for growth, opportunities for knowledge production that we should also be thinking about at this time, and not focusing 100%. That is not, I'm not suggesting at all that we ignore the syllabus, but I think some part of the syllabus should also be adjusted to understanding this situation and responding to this situation. And I think the importance of doing this is because the pandemic has had a huge impact on our lives. We know, for instance, that during the pandemic, domestic violence has increased in homes. Not just domestic violence on women, but on children. There's a lot of mental health issues related to the pandemic. And I think we need to acknowledge these things because, first of all, even teachers, our parents, people who face all kinds, are first human beings who are also dealing with this pandemic. So are children. Children might be struggling to understand the changes that are going on. Young people might be particularly affected by the disruption to their networks, to their friendships of these factors. So there's a whole mental health aspect to this pandemic also, I think, which we could perhaps address through our educational programs. So I'm really pleased to hear Minister Premjayantha talk about the new ways in which he is trying to ensure that children don't drop out, or our students don't drop out of the education system. But at the same time, I think it is also important that we think about what we should be learning and what we should be focusing on at this time, instead of sort of assuming that this is something we can just go on as normal. It's a very abnormal situation. We may have to deal with it actually for about a year or two longer, even before we can resort to what was pre pandemic. So, in that case, I think we have to also look at this opportunity as a time of learning for all of us, to think about what education means and how education should respond to these real life crises.
Thank you, Dr. Harini. Uh, Honorable State Minister, now when you were speaking previously, you mentioned that you tried to negotiate with many media stations, but it did not work
Yeah.
out well. So I also had this curiosity as to when I saw Guru Gedara being advertised, as to why only Rupavahini, why not the other media stations. I would like if you can explain and elaborate on this particular aspect.
So actually, I had two rounds of talks with most of the private channels, not in the Ministry of Education, but at Media Ministry. So then, of course, it is only Rupani Corporation. They dedicated iChannel and the Netra uh, from 4 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock in the night. So then, uh, of course, some there are instances. Then sometimes the teachers, even the parents, students, they don't know at what time they will telecast. So for ease, so then what we did was we prepared a timetable and publish it. And then recently we sent another circular to all the provincial directors, zonal directors, principals, through them to have a awareness program among teachers and the parents. Actually, we managed to get experienced teachers who have served over 10 years, 15 years in leading schools in Kala. So in a way, it's another innovation, because then with great pain, of course, our teachers, the NI staff, and all that, because we have only two production studios in Maharagama NI, but we managed to get uh, uh, the programs, produce programs from YAFNA in all the subjects in Tamil medium. So then that is why we can maintain the quality of the programs in Tamil medium. In Sinhala medium, of course, we managed to get experienced teachers from leading schools. So, but unfortunately, so far, even now, if you switch on to iChannel, right, then of course now the time is 2:30 in the grade 3 or 4 at this time. Grade 3, we have started from grade 3 to grade 13. So then you find at 3 o'clock grade 3, 4 o'clock grade 4, like that. Then they easy to keep it in mind, the timetable when we telecast that. But for GC advanced level students, of course, in the night and in the early morning, so they can get the access. And apart from that, the Itak Salava, every day you find over 4 million hits to Itak Salava by the students and the teachers. And we have permanent listeners or hit to the Itak Salava about 100,000. So we want to expand this. Now, even today, we are going to have another discussion. That is, at the moment, we have trace. We have 94 education zones in the country within 9 provinces, and we have 335 education divisions. So here, at the moment, I have in my hand, because I got this statistics today. Then, according to those statistics, of course, out of 10,165 schools, there are 3,453 schools. Most of them are primary schools. So students population is less than 100, where they don't have network coverage. But for 6,702 schools, yes, they have. So then the student population is 713, yes, 7,13,133 students. They can't get the access even from the school, right? So then there are places like in Uva province, in Monragala, and in the Ampara, Central, Polonnaruwa, Anuradhapura, remote areas, who still they don't have the towers to get connectivity. So then it will take some years. So therefore, we had several rounds of discussions, the telecom, and they are starting giving connections to fiber optics. So we will start with 200. But the issue is now schools are closed. So we make arrangements to open schools where they have facilities. Now, see, for an example, there are schools with Mahindode Vidyalaya. There they have 50 computers, so they can use it. And the students don't have a smartphone or a laptop or palm top, then they will be given at least 10 tabs, because at the moment we have tabs, we couldn't distribute this year. So we are sending all these tabs to those centers. So then our target is to, within next couple of days, to start 1,000 centers where the students can go, not necessarily their own school, some school, but principal is there, the IT teacher is there, the subject teachers, some of them are there. So they are to them. So then that is how we are going to expand this program where they don't have access or the connectivity, especially in the rural areas.
So we have questions coming in as well. But before we move on to questions, I have an open question to both Dr. Harini and our State Minister. For 2 years, children have been deprived of extracurricular activities which would build their personality, and many kids receive mental and emotional support on various issues had they been in school. But now all kids are homebound. So the pandemic has affected on the mental development of a child as well. So how prepared are we in addressing this concern? I think perhaps I'll move to Dr. Harini.
Yes, that's a really important question. But before I get to that, I also want to just respond to something you asked earlier. I think you asked the Honorable Minister why only the state media responded. Yes. I think this underscores the importance of state intervention in education, right? I think there are certain areas of our existence, like health, like education, which have to be managed by the state, which cannot be run on a profit motive. Immediately, when you bring in a profit motive into these sectors, these things don't become viable, right? It is on the when profit becomes the motive for engagement, this kind of response, which is necessary, that goes beyond thinking about profit, the thinking it about of it as a public service, then becomes neglected. So I think, in a way, this whole experience is teaching us the importance of state intervention in certain areas like health and like education. I would also add transport to that. So to get to your question, I think that's a crucial area we are going to have to think about in the years to come, especially for younger people. Like you very rightly said, school is not just about what is in the syllabus. The interactions, the experiences, whether you fight with each other, whether you get punished, whether you fall in love with your classmate, you fall out of love with your classmate, the misery that happens as a result of getting pulled up by your teacher, all of these things are important experiences in your development. Even in the university system, I really feel bad for the first years of this, of our current university system, who would have maybe spent one day in the university. That whole experience is necessary, right? And that is part of your learning. That is what makes you into a full rounded adult, a good citizen for this country, right? So I think we may probably have, going forward, we may have to have programs, we may have to pay extra attention to things to compensate for that. And that is why I also said right at the beginning that we need to think of the syllabus even currently in terms of what we can do in these circumstances to accommodate those areas, to fill that gap. Whether we can include activities, whether we can include some kind of program that will encourage students to learn from other sources and not just what is sort of in the standard syllabus. So that's a really important area that we need to think of how to address now. But in the years to come, we will really have to think in terms of compensating for what the kids have missed during these past 1 or 2 years.
So we have a question from our audience. So perhaps we'll move on to that. Krishan, we have Krishan. can you unmute? And we have, it says connecting. Right. So so
Yes.
right, until we get Krishan connected, on State Minister, you may respond to that.
Yes, that's a very important question, because the thing is, it doesn't mean that if you say education, so you can't stick to the syllabus, teacher guide, and the textbooks. So normally, so we have been our entire student population for last many decades, right? We always try to teach them. We never allow them to learn. So that is the main issue at the moment we have. So therefore, this is a good opportunity to make them learning, but somebody has to guide them. Now, say for an example, in science subjects there are some theories, say Newton theory or whatever it is. So then you have to give them the guidance, then only they can uh, have some research, or go into documents or go to the internet, go to a library, and then with some references, then they can prepare their what they means to answer questions or assignment. So, but apart from those things, of course, the activities, co-curricular activities and extracurricular activities, that is also part of education, because then you have to train them for teamwork, tolerance, and the empathy. So there are so many things that we have to teach the students, and with their guidance and from the environment. So without engaging co-curricular, extracurricular activities, of course, so you can't have a good human being, or that is the meaning of human resource management. So it's then not only here, of course, everywhere in the world they are facing the same challenges. But as you said, of course, we have about 14 channels in our country. State channels, two channels, and there are some private channels. No, in the morning, if you watch those channels, then you find from 8 find about 1 hour cartoons, right? Then you find by about 9 o'clock repeated telecast of teledramas or all films, right? So my question is, why can't they engage with some kind of a program, now quiz program, and the debate, like what how we engage in this program? Of course, they can get some 2 or 3 schools. So it doesn't matter that the students are at home, but through the internet they can connect and then have some debates, some competitions, quiz like that. Oh, those are also awareness programs, of course. Subject, or even it's like a extracurricular activities. I can remember during our school days, of course, there are some spelling competitions, English language, comprehensions, short stories like that, of course, in any language. So then of course, students, they don't waste their time even at home. Of course, they can engage with some kind of education acts. So that is the whole idea of this program. Keeping children learning through home-based activities means 4.2 million students of public schools, the others also can join, international schools and private schools if they wish to join. So then our target is to make sure that all the students are engaged and all the teachers are engaged. So this is not a new thing. So they can follow the syllabus, teacher guide and the textbooks. So they can do it at home. So my request is the private channels, of course, they can start some education programs during the time. They can have their entertainment programs after 6 o'clock. It's okay. But the thing is, from at least 7:30 to 10:30 or 2 hours, maximum 2 hours, that is also enough. So then please see, we also make that request to all the private media channels. Think about our future generation. Think about our human resource. Don't allow them to waste their time, so they can learn something even through televisions. That is the media at the moment we have, because we find 90%. We have 90% coverage of televisions, not like internet connectivities. So then it will take some time. Until such time, of course, our target is also to maximize their television programs and to start a dedicated channel for National Institute of Education. So, there are so many technicalities that we need towers, we need technical stuff. Those are the things that, but, even that, of course, we can't allow our students and the teachers, the whole education sector to isolate. So we have to keep them live with the education programs.
So if we can have Krishan, we have Krishan joining in with us. If you can post your question, if you can unmute yourself and pose your question, we can hear you. Krishan?
Thank you. Sorry, I had a bit of mishap and
we were having the same issues.
I can listen to you now.
Yeah, Mr. Minister, I have two questions. They are resulting from what you were saying in what you were sharing a while ago. One is what you just said also on this issue of private media not telecasting educational programs, especially at a time like this when students really need it. My question to you is, frequency is a national treasure and a national asset and a national resource, which has been given on behalf of by the government, the people's asset, to these private companies to commercialize. As part of licensing, there are some public duties and that they have to do with these national resources. What action will a government take to force these houses which are using the people's resource, a national resource, the frequency, and not doing a national service? Is my first question. My second question is, you were talking very rightly that you all are trying to do a lot of things, and obviously the government has a huge shortage of money and resources given the pandemic situation to do, especially in education, because this is going to have a long-term negative impact on our country. What is your opinion on the fact that the government even thought about importing vehicles for MPs spending 3.6 billion rupees when there is so much things that need to be done? Those are my two questions.
Of course.
Excuse me, Honorable Minister. So thank you for your question, Krishan. But it is a matter that indeed requires discussion. You're pertaining to a second question, but just to emphasize on why we are here and having this conversation. So the Parliament of Sri Lanka encourages these on many aspects, and we intend to create a platform where people can engage with their representatives and discuss what could be and what should be, rather than what was. Looking forward to a way forward, going beyond party politics. Today, Dr. Harinian, the State Minister Susil Premajayantha, is joining us representing the Ministerial Consultative Committee on Education. They are both on Twitter. They are active on Twitter. The question pertaining to vehicles, I think perhaps Honorable...
I can answer that because, of course, now it is not an issue at the moment because that was abandoned.
Right.
So then we can forget about that.
But if you want, you can take it to discussion
better to answer to first question. That is, of course, the gentleman referred to the frequencies. Frequencies are given by TRC, right? That is that. If you say it's asset, it belongs to entire nation. So then you have given this to for the commercial purpose to various institutions. But his question is, can't you force them to do this? But the thing is, if we start to do that, then of course there will be another issue that we are violating fundamental rights of, that is freedom of speech and information. So we don't want to get into this trouble. But instead, that of course, what we are going to do is to we dedicate at the moment the I and I channel and the Netra. So they are telecasting all the programs from grade 3 to A levels and the Taksalawa. And apart from that, we are going to start this digital the satellite television station. So then it's in the pipeline. We will do that, and then what we can do is we can request the private channels at least to start some even co-curricular or extracurriculars apart from. But there are some channels, of course, they are doing at least 1 hour, half an hour, like even 2 hours education programs. But that is not enough at this stage. We need more airtime for the education, as you said, the co-curricular and extracurricular activities.
Thank you, Honorable State Minister. So we'll move on to another couple of questions and then get back to the discussion. So we have Mr. Sivaraja, you wanted to ask a question. If you can unmute.
From where you speak?
Okay. Right. Right. Okay. Mr. Sivaraja, can you hear us? Right. So, okay. So we move on to our next question. Then, so now the grade 5 scholarship exams and O-level, A-levels are milestones for a majority of children in our country. The lapse caused by the pandemic in holding the examinations and the impact it has on the future of our children is also an obstacle. So, I to move on to Dr. Harini, and if you can give in your opinion pertaining to this.
Okay, so I think, yeah, so our request to the government is actually to take all of this into consideration in our assessment systems and to be a little more flexible in perhaps how we award the, how sort of make these assessments, even to make allowances and to accommodate the great difficulties that students have been going through over the past couple of years. So whether it comes to the grade 5 scholarship, O levels or A levels, we do think that the pandemic effect has to be taken into consideration in how we make what kind of flexibilities we are going to offer the students to compensate for the problems that they have been facing. So, as Minister Prem Jayantape may perhaps know, one of the issues that we are facing is that a lot of students are feeling very unhappy about the university admission process. That the difficulties that they underwent in actually sitting for the exams has not been considered in terms of how university admission process has been decided for this year. So I think in those kind of instances, taking into consideration the very specific context, we should make allowances. Many of the procedures don't, for instance, many of the procedures that the UGC follows are not made with any academic logic but bureaucratic logic, right? Because of the inefficiencies within the system. So those kinds of things can be changed. We can be flexible about those things. And I think that level of flexibility is really essential to compensate for the difficulties that students have been facing during this time.
Yes, as far as grade 5 scholarship exam is concerned, the last time, of course, students studied up to grade 5. So then they didn't have any issue. But the only issue was that the cutoff mark went up. Yeah. As a result, because there are 4 multiple choice questions, instead that they have been given 3. So it is easy to select 1 out of 3 than 1 out of 4. So then we'll forget about that. Now the issue is O levels and A levels. O levels are A levels not only for qualifying for the next, for A level students qualifying to go into the respective faculties of the universities, and then they can follow some, say, chartered accounting or SEMA or whatever it is, the other professional examinations, local whatever it is. And apart from that, A level qualifications also required to get a job, right? And O level, that is standard. Because the thing is now, see, for an example, recruit to the banks at that level, right? So you need 5 credits, credits with maths, language, and English. Then 3 passes, at least 3 passes. Now I think 2 credits and 1 pass. GC advanced level. So that is the standard for those jobs. Now, supposing the standards, we reduce the standards, then of course you can't maintain that standard. Even the clerical examination to recruit clerks to management assistant to public administration. Like that, of course. Then the advanced level also there is another milestone because not only to enter to the university, but to get a job or to engage with some kind of education from that point. So therefore, I'm not saying that we should stick to the same standard, but as Dr. Harini suggested, of course, you find in those buses, right? There are, when the paper setters set papers for GC advanced level, sometimes, of course, in school system, of course, students sometimes they are going out of the limit, go further. Then, of course, students are not in a position to answer to those questions. You find so many instances like that, of course. In that, of course, when they what do you call examiners. So they are given instructions to consider these aspects and they are given the line, the guidance. But I'm not talking about that. But the thing is, the paper setters also can be instructed to, when they set papers for O levels and A levels, even grade 5 scholarships, consider the present situation, the challenges that students, teachers, parents, entire society are facing at the moment. So you can, this is a special situation. And as you said, Dr. Harini, of course, according to this, when we go ahead with the education reforms, even at the moment, there are some university professors, they are engaging with considering university admission systems. So then we continue the system introduced 20, 25 years, 30 years ago we introduced. So now this everything is changed. So then we have to adjust to the changing situation.
Right. We had a question from Chamara Hattatua. If you can unmute your mic and pose your question. Chamara? Chamara, are you there? Chamara? Yes. We have Chamara with us. You can present your question. Chamara, you have to unmute your mic. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Then Ram Dulip, you have to unmute your mic and pose your question. Okay, Ram Dulip has sent a message instead.
That's good.
Yeah, this time Commonwealth Youth Council Sri Lanka candidate representative. I have a question. Since the syllabus cannot cover within the given time frame, what is the plan in order to cover the syllabus? I think,
So then I can't do a direct answer to that because the education ministry is they are having a dialogue with the provincial directors, the examination department, and the paper setters and all that, of course. Most probably, like last year, we have to postpone at least 3 months or 6 months like that, then allow students to cover most of the syllabuses and the teachers, and then paper setters also we have to advise how to set questions considering the coverage of the syllabuses.
right. So they have funny Twitter names. Okay, Captain Haddock, News Moti. That's how your name goes. You
Sorry,
can.
host, can I add something for that question?
Yes, yes, Ram.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm Ram. So I'm this time Sri Lankan representative of Commonwealth Youth Council. So my question was, Honorable
State Minister Susil Premachandh.
yeah, Sushma Premachandh and Dr. Harini. So
Yes.
as I said now, so we have a syllabus like a time frame. So now people have like it has become like the the teachers are giving the pressure and they are trying to cover the syllabus within the time frame in order to like so because they have to cover the time frame. So my question is, so how it going to impact students because they are not getting efficient education. So how that going to affect students and what is the plan? So are you like, do we have another plan for that or something?
Yeah, of course, the Ministry of Education is they are having discussions, as I said, with the examination department and the paper setters and the provincial directors and the subject directors. So I think most probably there's a possibility of postponing at least 3 or 6 months the exam like last year, and allow the teachers to cover the main areas of that particular subject, then of course then and there give some flexibility to means when they prepare questions.
Dr. Harini, we would like to know your opinion on this matter as well. So we talk about giving flexibility to certain areas when it comes to covering the syllabus, but and we have to look at children moving forward, from one grade to another as well. So now being on hold and partially grasping, being deprived of what they could have gotten if they were in school, things like extracurricular. So they've been deprived of so many things. Now the syllabus is also being curtailed to a certain extent. Now, what sort of an overall impact is going to come about as this generation, moves on to be adults?
Yes, that is going to, we are going to have to factor that in the future, right? I mean, hopefully this will not go on forever.
Yes.
Hopefully this will not last their entire educational period. But these are considerations that we will have to think about going forward.
Yes.
And again, and I think this gives us an opportunity to also bring all of it into our education system. I'm not convinced that we had these things even pre-pandemic. But I think now it's forcing us to think of these things more seriously. So maybe reduce some of the content of our syllabus and include some of these other things that we're now talking about. The development, the co-curricular work, the sort of personality, analytical skills, more assignment-based assessments. Mm-hmm. Because I think in some countries what they did was they, instead of having the exams, they looked at the assignments as a alternative, right? But we don't have that system, so it's very difficult to sort of overnight change the entire philosophy or the culture of education, which is pretty much what we've had to do. So maybe this gives us an opportunity to think going further that this kind of education system has its limitations, and we are going to have to think of a more flexible, more sort of activity based learning, that kind of education system, COVID or not, right? Because I think that if we had that, we would have perhaps coped better and not had such a difficulty transitioning to this emergency.
Right. So before moving on to the next question, which we have in line, adding to the same thing that you were saying, now what sort of a role does the Ministerial Consultative Committee on Education has to play in this context? So we have a lot to think about, a lot of new things. Look at the future mainly. So what sort of a role do you all have to play?
As you know, I'm a newbie to Parliament, right? But I think how I see it is that it gives us a role to provide input into policy and legislature. And I really appreciate the opportunity that the committee work gives us to participate in those things. I think for the public especially, they only see what's in the chamber and us yelling at each other across the aisle. That's not what happens, or that's not even the main business of Parliament. I think the main business of Parliament is in the committee system. And I think in a good democracy, we should be strengthening the committee system so that parliamentarians of whatever political party can contribute before the legislation is actually brought into Parliament for to the chamber for debate. So I think I think one of the things we need to do, and unfortunately, again, because of COVID, I think the committee system was also affected, right? So having those committees and making sure that those committees work is, I think, a good way in which we can perhaps move beyond this antagonistic political culture that seems to be dominant, unfortunately, during this time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Hani. So I have the Honorable Minister next to me. I think he was smiling in agreement to what you said as well.
Yeah, of course. Now I have represented so many committees for last 21 years, especially as the Minister of Education for 5 years from 2005 to 10, of course. Every month, as scheduled, we had our consultative committee meetings. And apart from that, during the last Parliament sessions, not the present one, of course, they had, I think, nearly 3 years consultative committees and oversight committees, that is to introduce new education. They were talking about STEM education, then STEAM education, right? And then reduce the contents and then improve the skills. Those are the things that they discussed. And then we took into consideration when we introduce the next round of education reforms, which we have planned for next 5 to 10 years, that at some point we had to start it. So unfortunately, when we about to start, of course, we have to face all these challenges. Now, for example, even today, this morning I had a Zooming meeting with batch of principals. That we are going to have over 1,000 national level schools, apart from 371 schools at the moment we have. So then the next batch of principals are being trained. But today we started the second batch, the program. So when we started, of course, I had to speak only half an hour instead 1 hour because of the technical issues that we have, right? Even today, of course, we have these technical issues.
Yes.
Now think about innocent children, right? Where they don't have resources. The teachers, where they don't have resources, and the connectivity. Those are the challenges,
Yes.
of course. So then, as a nation, of course, all the media institutions, the professionals, academics, we all have to get together at this stage. And as a nation, that is, we are losing our human resource, especially in the future. Because before I conclude my small briefing, in this regard, of course, there are 17 SDG goals. Out of 17, the number one is poverty alleviation, and number four, quality education. So I can remember I saw some media, statement or the article in the newspaper that according to UNESCO and the UN, the most affected two SDGs are poverty alleviation and the quality education. So then the poor country is getting poorer, and if you don't the literacy. Now fortunately we maintain a very healthy literacy rate, especially in the region, but the issue is we have to maintain that. To maintain that, of course, we need some support from the public, the professionals, academics, and as we have to work as a team, as a nation.
True. So we'll move on to a couple of questions. So, like I said, so both Dr. Harini and Honorable State Minister new to Twitter, so you can see these names. We'll allow. So, Captain Haddock, can you please unmute your mic and pose your question you have sent in? Yes, right.
Yeah.
We have.
So first of all,
Tell us
thank you
your
for
good name and pose your question.
yeah, I'll go with this name if you don't
Okay,
mind.
right. No worries, no worries. Totally understand.
And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So, Minister, I don't know whether this is the right panel for this question, because this question kind of sounds similar to what the previous question. So I'm a student who's gonna sit for this year's level. So my concern is the date for the exam, they were set for the month of October, as the school just started the end of April this year. But as the numbers were rising, the school are closed again. So we couldn't continue the usual thing at school. So my question is there any consideration that you people about to like extend the exam date further? Because you can't really compare this year's situation, I mean, the 2021 situation for 2020 level batch, because like they were affected for like 8 months, but for us it was like almost like 2 years since like March 2020. So it's a long period. And like as a science student, like I am doing biological science, so subjects like physics and chemistry, we need to have that the practical sessions. Like we need to have that muscle memory. Like someone can argue that okay, you can just go through video, or you can just go through some theory notes and like cover it up. But if anyone has like physics or chemistry, you know that you need to have muscle memory. You have to come across those equipments and everything just to give the best shot for your paper. Even though the education ministry would say that we would take into consideration that we are going to be more flexible with you. Like A-level student, they know that at the end of the day, A-level is A-level. So even though they would say they would be flexible, it didn't happen last year. The paper was like the usual A-level paper. I think that's the least thing we could expect to happen in A-level, that the paper would be easy, because that won't happen. So that is my concern. So if it's possible to take a consideration to extend the date for further, just at least up to December. So we will have extra months, so we can thoroughly get ready for the exam and face it. So that is my question. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Thank you for that question. Of course, I feel that what you are thinking as a student, of course, as you said, I also did science subjects for my GC advanced level. Before you born, I believe. That is late 1970s. Of course, the physics, of course, we did some over 80, 85 practicals. And the zoology and the chemistry and all that, of course, you need a laboratory, not a private laboratory. Of course, in the school, of course, like a team, of course, you do some tests, or as individuals, you do some tests. Of course, that is how you keep the memory. That is to with that experience to answer the questions. I think there's a strong possibility of postponing the exams for students to cover their syllabuses and teachers to teach them, and then getting ready for the examination. Not like last year. Of course, this year, of course, you lost almost 2 years studies. Last year, of course, the students lost only 8 months, 9 months, or mostly 1 year. But this time, of course, you lost 2 years. Definitely, this will be taken into consideration by the Minister of Education.
Right. Thank you, Honorable State Minister. So, Yahani Hevagama, if you can unmute your mic and pose your question. Yahani?
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Hello. Actually, the question I was going to ask was the same as before, about the practicals, and is there any consideration to cover those practicals? So I think my question got answered. So thank you.
Wonderful, Yahani. Thank you. Right. So let's move on to Chamara. To there, if you can unmute your mic and speak, Chamara. Chamara. Right. We'll move on to Zul. Zul,
I actually didn't have a question, and I don't know how I got listed as a speaker.
Right. No worries.
Can you hear me? But since I've been given the opportunity to talk,
right.
Yeah, I want to know if any steps have been taken to sort of in terms of ragging, like to measures to address ragging in universities.
Well, Zul,
I don't know if it's COVID related, so yeah, you can ignore that question also if you want to.
Thank you.
It's good that in a way COVID, because there won't be any ragging, because all the newcomers and the senior students also they care about their health conditions rather than ragging.
Right. So we have Pulatisi Herat. If you have a question, you can unmute and pose your question. Pulatisi Herat, are you there? Right. So Lahiru Sampath, we're trying to take as many as questions because we are running short of time. Lahiru Sampath, you have to unmute your mic and ask your question. Right. Himal, there's so many wanting to ask questions, but they're not unmuted. Himal?
Technical issue.
Or Chamara?
Hi, would it be possible me to ask my question? I was waiting quite a bit time.
Right, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Com team, and thank you, Honorable Ministers, for having this space actually to minimize the gap between the general public and the policymakers. Giving this kind of spaces, actually, it's value for us to ask questions from direct policymakers. My first question is to ask whether with all these COVID-related waves and stuff, do we have the inclusive education right now? Because what I see is we just talk about school education, the university educations, and we may forgetting about the handicap education system as well as this Pirivena Adhyapana, which we are not implementing anything as such for them to get online and learn, because there's no related education materials right now. That's my first question. And the second question is actually we are still on the classical education mode where people try to use this classical curriculums to teach people online. I have seen a lot of people, like come online and just read books. When are we reform all these education systems to come up with the new digitalization theories to give them the students idea about this is the new technology and this is the STEM education that you can have it. So these are the two questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Harini.
Yeah, I think that question about inclusive education is a very important question. Unfortunately, even pre-COVID, we were not doing very well with inclusive education. You know that a lot of kids had to have drop out of education because we are not responding to their needs and to responding to different learning needs. Not just with infrastructure and physical resources, but even with this kind of learning resources that we offer. So yes, so in a way, this pandemic has increase that problem, because I don't think we are thinking really in terms of how people with learning disabilities or special needs are able to access education. Whether they need special kind of input, special interventions. This is a very neglected area, unfortunately. I think it's an area that we really need to focus on much more seriously. In terms of your second question, maybe the honorable minister may have more information about what exactly the government is doing at this point. But my feeling is that we are not really addressing it, and that we didn't address it even previously. Secondly, with regard to this online education and digitalization, I think Mr. would also agree that there's a difference between distance education and online education. Online education means one thing, but distance education is about remote teaching and learning, which can use multiple methods. Doesn't have to be only online. And I think that's the direction we really need to push, to look at multiple methods of teaching and learning, so that we are not dependent on any one medium for teaching. And this might actually address some of the inequalities we are also facing in terms of infrastructure difficulties, accessing. If we have multiple modes of teaching, then if one doesn't work, the other. So I really think we also need to get our terminology right, and also understand how broad a concept distance education is, and not just imagine that distance education is only about online. Even digital education is not just about the internet. It's there can be much, or sort of, just Zoom lectures or doing something like that. There can be a lot more, and whether we use TV, whether we use radio, whether we use YouTube, all of these different modes of teaching are things that we need to explore. Those we shouldn't probably rely only on one exclusively. I think that's the most important message that we need to take from this. And but I, as someone who worked in the distance education mode previously, I'm a firm believer in distance education, and technology plays a big role in that. But there is a philosophy behind distance education as well. And I think it's difficult to sort of switch overnight from a very conventional education mode to this much more technologically dependent education mode. And I think you need training, you need preparation, and that's something that we need to build into our education system going forward.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Harini. So, Himal, can we have your question? We have Himal Kotalawala. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Himal? Himal? Himal, are you with us? Right, okay. Chamara? Chamara,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Good to hear from you, right. Yes,
This is regarding related to educational policy. It's the restructure of the policy. Do you believe that this should be changed, and the current syllabuses and for all grades? I think should be reviewed, and we need more. We need new addition to the syllabus after reviewing this. And the minister and the Harini, do you believe in this change?
Yes.
And actually, I think that we should include that sex education and philosophy and more art subjects. That's my suggestion, and that what I believe in. Is there any ongoing process or any plan for this government to do this review within these 2-3 years?
Yeah, that is, yes, of course, I can answer that question, because when after the last general election, of course, when the cabinet ministries and the state ministries formed, matching to the, especially matching to the education reforms, because 2.5 years, academics, professionals, and the experienced teachers, about over 200, got together, and they had their brainstorming sessions for many times, and then they have prepared policy framework for uh, general education and the higher education and the vocational training. So That is why the three state ministries introduced with the Ministry of Education. So then those three state ministries given different tasks. My ministry is given education reforms. The education reforms, of course, uh, we started the digital platform, so then any citizen can send their proposal, so we can consider it. Then so far 2,400 suggestions sent to that digital platform, and there are four committees with resource persons. They're analyzing the suggestions and the proposals and see whether this is our matching to the policy framework prepared by academics and professionals. So we finalize this by 15th of July, and in the meantime, the NIE, the Secretary of the State Ministry, engaged with building capacity among the directors and other resource persons teachers of NIE for them to matching to the reforms that we are focusing. The main change is that is reduce contents and reduce the pressure of examinations of the students, and then allow them to learn, and teachers, they have to guide them. So not only that, of course, we are going to introduce through this process the STEAM education, where most of the countries, over 100 countries, for last 10 to 15 years, changing the education systems, the modalities, pedagogy. All these areas are considered, and then by end of 2024, it's planned to have the GC oral examination with the reforms.
Dr. Harini, do you want to add something to it?
Thank you. Yes, I really hope that things, for one, that you asked a specific question about sex education, reproductive health education. I think that is essential.
We had several rounds of talks with the GMOI set of doctors and some organizations. They are very much concerned about this. So we are considering that.
Yeah, I think age appropriate
And the legal education
and
also
legal,
up to
yeah,
certain
certain,
extent from grade
yeah,
6.
yes, and age appropriate reproductive health education is, I think, really quite critical. And also I also think that sort of more multidisciplinary learning is what is the way forward. I think even for a good doctor or a good engineer, to have the influence of the arts and the humanities is very necessary to make you a better doctor and a better engineer, someone who's more sort of focused on people.
Yes, now that is the idea of STEAM education.
That's the idea of
Science,
STEAM is
technology, engineering,
arts mathematics, right? So, and as well, I think even for art students to have that input of science and maths is essential. So that interdisciplinary way is, I think, much more important than sort of compartmentalizing people in different sort of
And we stick to
sectors and
baskets.
sticking to baskets. There has to be more flexibility
We
between the
want to
baskets. Do away with baskets. That's the idea.
We are moving on to our final question. So,
Excuse me?
Eswaran Ratnam, can we? Iswaran, I'm sorry, Iswaran Ratnam, can you unmute your mic? And Iswaran, are you with us? You need to unmute. Iswaran, right. So, so we have right. So yes, so he's actually a journalist. So right. So wow. Okay. This name, attention-seeking Prime Minister. I really, you can
Hi.
mute. Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Isha. I
Alright.
just had a couple of questions. I'm sorry that I kind of joined late. But just based on what's been said so far, I think there was a mention about sex education and how it should be age appropriate. I would just like to ask just a couple of questions based on what do you consider age appropriate sex education in Sri Lanka? That's my first question, because of course, if we have a culture in the country where even holding hands and being on a date with your partner is considered something so grave enough to be arrested, what exactly is age appropriate sex education then? And secondly, there has been efforts for education where sex education was tried to be brought into discussion by Hatte Pot and all of that. And I think we all kind of know how that ended up. So what exactly stands in the way of incorporating proper sex education or age-appropriate sex education? Is it the fact that we still as a culture are not open to talking about it? Or is that something that we can actually expect to happen through the reforms? Or is it going to just be lost in translation? And also, do you think that we talk about literacy and we have all of these syllabuses that have high standard of education, but I feel like students have less talents in rational thinking, critical thinking, and intelligence as a whole, both emotional and like other areas. So how do you as the government want to make sure that these skills, these are life skills that are not incorporated into our children's minds? How would you bring that across through reforms? Those are my two questions.
Right. Thank you for your question. So basically, we are running short of time, and we wish to stick to today's theme, education beyond COVID-19. So we are actually in discussion as to how we're going to look forward and face the challenges that we're faced with, and the challenges that will be coming ahead. However, if Dr. Harini or State
Yeah,
Minister
of
could
course,
briefly.
it's in the table. Of course, the reforms
Right.
mainly focus on skills development from grade 6, not only from grade 6 or from grade 1, even preschool stages, of course, and the skills development and reduce the contents, and then the most uh, actually the present education system is to memory. Huh? After 2 years education in grade 10 and 11, then students they have to sit for O-level examination at memory. GC advanced will also the same, apart from few practical practicals in the laboratories or in the classroom, of course. The critical thinking, teamwork, all these things, of course, we have forgotten that, of course. Now, with the reforms, of course, we want to refresh their minds and then thinking and then how to work with others. And then, as I said earlier, the tolerance, empathy, all these things are taken into consideration. As you said, I don't want to focus much attention to sex education because we have to consider our culture, of course, in the country, but our students with their maturity, of course, at the certain age, of course, then while they are studying science subjects, so they naturally health science and the science subject, because our one of the objective is health first in the reforms. So then they will be given the within that limitations, of course, they will be given to when they come into say 14, 15, 16, like that, of course, then they can study within limits matching to our culture.
Right. So, Nissan sir, you have a question. One last question before we end this. Yes.
Sure. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So I'm building on Dr. Harni's previous point. The pandemic has forced both students and teachers to acquire e-literacy and the ability to do online teaching. These skills will be lost after a few years if they are not reused after the pandemic. So I'm asking this because this is beyond COVID. One example of reuse might be, as mentioned, distance use. There are schools that do not have teachers for STEM or English and so on and so forth. So now that most of the students and teachers have the ability to do online or distance learning, wouldn't it be possible to give the students in those remote areas an opportunity to connect to schools that have these teachers instead of sending teachers over there most of the time as a punishment transfer? Maybe use these abilities that the people have acquired for good in the future after the pandemic. This is one suggestion. Do you have any other such future plans that you may be able to use?
I think the future plans, the minister may have to answer that question, but I can give my thoughts on it and our suggestions. Yes, certainly we can build on the opportunities that have been created and the fact we've been forced to move on to technology much faster had we not had this pandemic. So I think we can take that as something that we can build on. But I think while we cannot ever forget those who are left out, right? I think it's always important to invest in infrastructure. It is important to look at multiple methods because the core principle of education has to be that it's equal and that no one is left out. no one is excluded from any system of education, because education is a right that all of us have. Every child has that right. And as much as we focus on the technology, we have to focus on the ultimate goal of education, which is to produce a good citizen for this country, to take this country forward. There's a social and a civilizational purpose behind education, which I think we should never lose sight of. So investing in and as you know, before the pandemic, our education system was very unequal as it is. And I think addressing the in a way, some of the new technology has exacerbated that inequality, and addressing that inequality through infrastructure input, and also the training of teachers, preparing them for this, will have to be key policy interventions, that the key investments that the government makes in the years and months going forward.
Right.
Yes, of course. The final question is very interesting. Of course, today our topic is the education beyond COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, the Minister of Education, the State Minister of Education Reforms, and the government, together with the TRC, ICTA, Telecom. So we have already planned to give connections not to towers, but by using fiber optics. That's the fastest way to do it, and then the range is very wide. So then by end of July, even with these challenges, of course, they are completing 200 schools are given fiber optic facility, and then we have allocated funds to improve uh, three halls for primary, junior secondary, and senior secondary as smart classrooms to use this facility. And apart from that, of course, the students in Simbalandu in Munragala can learn from a master from Royal College in Colombo. We have already made that arrangement. And apart from that, by end of this year, it is the agreement with the Telecom and the TRC to complete 1,169 schools by giving fiber optic facility. Not only that, of course, then they will be given computers, then other equipments, and the teachers also will be posted to those schools, because we are training at the moment 971 IT graduates as trainees, of course, at the moment. So they will be posted to those schools, especially in the remote areas. And we have over 4,000 graduates who are being trained at the moment as teachers. So we can send them to those areas, especially the remote areas and the science teachers. Those are the three areas that we are in short of teachers. And then government and the Minister of Reforms and the Minister of Education, we have a plan for next 5 years with the reforms to improve the human resources and the physical resources in our school system, as well as higher education and the vocation training. So I take, in conclusion, of course, I take this opportunity to thank Madhavi and other supporting staff for organizing this event today. This is the first event organized by the Communication Department of the Parliament to discuss very important issue at the moment we all are facing. So then I thank Dr. Harini with her experience as a lecturer attached to Open University. She is very mindful, and she has experience about distance learning, because the Open University, they have over 25 branches all over the island. So they use distance learning mode for their students attached to Open University. Therefore, I think this is very fruitful discussion, and I thank all the participants who pose questions to us and make some suggestions. So we all get together and see our future generation is mindful, and they have all the necessary skills to cope up with these type of challenges in the future.
So actually, it was a wonderful experience. We did have a couple of technical issues at the beginning, but I think discussions are important, and having the privilege to see both the minister from the government and Dr. Harini from the opposition engaging in such an intellectual conversation. It was wonderful, and this is what we want as well. Dr. Harini, if you have final remarks.
Yes, thank you again for organizing this event, and I really encourage the Parliament media unit to do more of this because it's important. It's also a way for getting citizens engaged with Parliament and for holding us accountable. And that's one of the key things about how the parliamentary system should be working. So thank you for organizing this event. I think it's an important subject, a subject that we can continue to discuss on and off Twitter. And I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you, Dr. Harni. Thank you, State Minister Susil Premajayanta. And thank you very much for our very active audience. We will continue to do this, and we expect that you will keep joining with us and keep asking more questions from your representatives. So, with that, we mark the end of today's session, Education Beyond COVID-19. So, we'll meet you again on another day with another interesting session with two other very interesting individuals. So have a nice day.